I went from 0 to $1 million in about 13 or 14 months.
Wow.
What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand. Say it again now. What a brand, what a brand, what a brand, what a mighty good brand.
Welcome, Lori, to Art of the Brand podcast. I'm so excited to have you. You're a true woman boss, and I want to call you a girl boss. You're killing it. You're an author. You're a podcast speaker. You're an entrepreneur. You're an angel investor. You also started your own company recently. How did you start all of this? How did you get here?
God, that is a loaded question. But also, I'm from a really small town. I did not see entrepreneurship really around me or in my family. I share this because I think it's really important for people to hear. Growing up, I was raised in a more restrictive religion, which made a small town even smaller.
Cool.
So I was only allowed to associate with people inside of that congregation, and there was 114 people in the congregation at the time. And I say that because I didn't have dreams of doing anything that you said until I started being able to see other people who had done what I was doing.
Wow.
So it wasn't until I moved out of that area and decided to leave much later on and go and seek out being around people whose realities were my dreams. That is truly when I started to go, oh, what is this whole other world? What are other people doing? What are these brands that people have, or personal brands, and what's possible for me? And I think that is, one of the big places where it started was out of a complete need to make money. So my husband and I actually, we got married at a really young age, and he was the main breadwinner because I did not ever graduate from high school, you guys, ever. I was homeschooled through high school, never graduated. So when I met my husband, he was in mortgage and finance, and he was just flying up through the ranks. And I was a big dreamer. I always had big goals and wanted to do them, but I wasn't doing them because I was still stuck in my story of I'm not smart enough. I can't ever do that. I'm not educated. Well, it wasn't until 2008 hit, and my husband, who was the main breadwinner, ended up because he was in mortgage and finance, and if you think about 2008,
yeah, totally, but yeah,
he ended up losing his job. We lost our home, we lost our cars, we were $300,000 in debt. So I will tell you that the first entrepreneurship journey that I started was out of the complete rock bottom of going, what do we do now? And it was, okay, well, no better time than than losing everything to face your fear of getting out there and starting something. So that was when I first started getting into personal training. And I had worked at an LA Fitness at the time that this happened, and I was making $6 per 30-minute session.
Oh my God.
And this was the first time that I really started talking to people. I had started getting into personal development, and I remember listening to these, lectures and reading all these different books from different people. And one of them had said, you have to share your dream with anyone you come in contact with. So I remember being at LA Fitness and sharing with all my clients. I was like, hey, I want to start my own studio, and I want to go out on my own. And it wasn't much longer after that one of my clients said, hey, I'm opening my own chiropractic studio. It was a woman. And she said, you can train in the lower level. You don't have to pay me. We can reassess on month 3. We can do a trade. You can train me for free rent for 3 months. And you can start your own thing there. I said, yes. I was started 2 weeks later. And that was the first journey into entrepreneurship. And that's kind of where it all started, is out of this complete need to go and figure out how to make more money. This one's hard for me. My product brand is, if we're categorizing it, it's a daily beauty supplement.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But the brand of Lori. This is the thing we struggle for. It's why we called the podcast Art of the Brand, because nobody can define a brand. It's this esoteric concept, but then everybody talks about branding. But when I looked up you have such a cool background, such a power image that I don't see on any of your platforms.
Yeah, so this is great. Do we get to do a session on this?
We're going to do a little bit of both.
I would say, if I could look at all of the things that I have done throughout like every single thing. If it's a live event, if it's a book, if it's a podcast, for me, it's all about connecting, like teaching people how to build a network and connect into the groups and to the people that will help them
What
get
comes
to
to
their
my
next
mind
level.
is Lori
Like,
Harder, modern
help them
day
create
Amazon
whatever it
warrior,
is that
and
they want to
amplifier of
create or
dreams.
fulfill that next dream.
That's what just pops to my mind. Right?
He gets everybody's names wrong also, just so you know. Like it's an ongoing problem that I deal with. It actually keeps me up at night. Like he gets my brother's name wrong. It's you kind of stumbled. Like I'll let it slide, but you did kind of stumble. That's such a great point on the being the consumer side. Like with the digital, it's so much easier to consume at home, but it's so different than when you go there in person. But also on the creator side, I've had conversations with a lot of clients and like other creators recently where I'm really pushing them to do in person, because you get so siloed in the feedback that you receive. Like it tends to be like very categorical, but there's something intangible about getting that feedback and that energy in person for how that can help you level up on both sides of the equation, like being the person hosting the event in person as well as being on the receiving end of the education and info.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think there's a whole new level that you can access as like a teacher or an event host.
Yeah.
Because there's a whole thing that you go through with that, because you know, in the beginning of when you're hosting events, it's like, there's so many thoughts that are going on around your head. Like as the host, at first you think that you have to provide all the value. So there's so much pressure there and you're like, oh my God, and you're freaking out and you feel like you have to level up to provide that value. And then as the journey of putting events on, you have this realization of you just need to be a really incredible host who can like hold space and facilitate well, but the value is going to be within the room and what they create for themselves. That kind of takes the pressure off, but allows you to like, it's just a whole journey being a host.
It's a whole part of it. So you went from, so you become a kind of fitness, I guess, personal trainer. So I want to get to kind of where Glossy enters in. So what is that in between chapter of where Lori Harder became a personality and a creator? So
from the fitness trainer, what ended up happening is I created a personal brand from that. And I was just, you know, I remember MySpace and Facebook, like, because fitness wasn't something that was natural to me growing up, I knew that fitness was a huge way to transform yourself and to, like, break through a lot of your fears, because I had done it myself. I noticed that by getting the discipline of going to the gym and learning that discipline of like, wow, these results take a really long time, that it was transferring to other parts of my life. So from being in the fitness world, I did love it. I opened my own studio. I did that for a while. But what I started observing is that I could work someone out all the time. Like I would have some women who would do 5 days a week with me, but I couldn't change their body or make a transformation if they mentally weren't willing to change.
Yeah.
And so this got me really interested in personal development, and I was on my own personal development journey. And so at that point, I had started wanting to get into like personal development events. I'd gone to a lot of them. I had gone to Landmark. I'd gone to a lot of Tony Robbins. I'd gone to Jack Canfield. I got like all of these different mentors, Gabby Bernstein. And I just became fully immersed in wanting to do personal development for people, because I was like, we all want we want a result. We want more money, or we want the body, and we want the relationship. Except none of that is going to work if you don't work on yourself first and figure out what's holding you back. So in the middle was personal development, events, network marketing, the podcast, and writing a book.
Cool. And then so you invested in the personal, I guess you went all in on the personal brand piece. And then your book ended up being successful, or was it because you were early on in the days of social that you got that momentum? Like I'm trying to figure out what the tipping point was for you.
I think it was that every single day I went onto Facebook and wrote about how I was overcoming a struggle of either anxiety or of not following through, because I had that story for a long time because I never graduated and I never finished anything. So I think that I learned how to create a relatable story every single day on Facebook. I remember I would read a personal development book or like think of whatever was going on in my life, and I would write 1 to 2 paragraphs on Facebook and just like talk back and forth with people. Like, I didn't know what I was doing at the time, but all of a sudden I had, you know, these different people following me. And then I also started doing when I decided to launch a personal development event and the tickets did not sell how I hoped, I was like, well, shoot, I better get on here because these aren't selling. I better go on this new thing called lives, and I'm going to do a live every single day for a year. And I'm going to also talk about my event in each one. And that took off.
Amazing. So you got comfortable in the uncomfortable because you were not prepared to fail.
Yep. We put money down. That's another thing. Like, you know how we were saying you have to put pressure behind your goals?
Yep.
Well, I put like $80,000 down on an event venue that we didn't have, and these tickets weren't coming through. So I was like, guess what I wouldn't have done if I wouldn't have put that money down?
What?
I would never have gone on lives every day. Ever.
Wow.
Never.
That's a very cool story.
That is a really cool story.
Did you vlog any of that? The first would be cool to have captured.
I know, I do have it, so I have to go back, and I want to go back to the first ones. Like, that would be amazing.
You have to. I feel like so many of the stories you hear, one of my favorite Tony Robbins quotes is success leaves clues. But you often hear so many of the similarities or those patterns between people's success stories, but seldom do I hear about posting on Facebook as being one of the reasons that compounded to a following. So that's awesome. And then one
So cool, just a cool story about that, how it truly, like,
yeah.
it really worked is because, you know, it's like, okay, well, did I fill the event from that? Okay, so when I would go on live, I was in my bathrobe every morning and I wouldn't have makeup on. And the reason that I did that is because I was always waiting to be ready. Like, it was the time when everybody was like highly produced, a lot of makeup on, like, the thing went on, you know? And I was like, I'm never gonna be that girl because I'm never getting ready. So I was like, okay, well, what if we showed everyone that they can just do it not ready? And so I rotated between like these two bathrobes. And when I got to my event, literally, I think I got bought like 10 robes, and a bunch of people were wearing robes, and I went out in a robe.
That's amazing. So we got to bring back the robe. Like,
I know.
That's awesome.
You should sell 100,000 robes just as part of your
The connection robe. I feel like Lori Harder's brand is one of connection. Like, that is the theme. So you've become an inspiration and a thought leader in kind of, I guess, like the self-help and like health and wellness. So is that what led you to launching your new brand, Glossy?
That is a lot of what led to it. I also have a very extensive background in network marketing, selling supplements and products.
Oh, cool.
So we did that we're actually still a part of a company, but we haven't actively been involved in it. But that was a really huge part of our story that I kind of left out. But when we were going from, losing everything and being $300,000 in debt, one of my clients, when I opened my new studio, was doing network marketing, and I remember she tried to get me into it for like 6 months, and I was like, I am never doing that. Like, my parents did that, and like, you don't get invited, like, your family stops inviting you places, people hate you, like, that was just the stigma, right? And so here I am, doing fitness training, to help me catch up on being $300,000 in debt and borrowing all of my in-laws' retirement to try to get us out of the situation we were in. I'm like, we're never going to pay this back. And so one day, 6 months later, she not only had lost 100 pounds, no lie, and I was like, God, I wish I could say I knew I was this good of a trainer, but not all my clients are having this experience. But she brings in a check, and it was for $13,000. How long did it take you to earn this? And she was like, this is for 1 week, Lori. I'll bring in next week. And I was like, sign me up, show me what to do. We went on a walk every single day, Monday through Friday, we ended up doing that for like 2 to 3 years. But in a little over a year, I went from 0 to $1 million in about 13 or 14 months.
Wow.
In network marketing. And I also understood, so this is the brand portion where everything starts crossing over. I understood it's all related. Okay, I'm in fitness, but I'm also in like this personal development thing guess what people who are in fitness and personal development need? Food. Like,
And more.
a good option
Yeah.
for food.
Yeah.
And so I think that if I can say one strength that I truly have understood about myself, is I understand how to take any topic and turn it into a story that fits with what my like goal is, with what that agenda is for transformation for that person. So, and it's all required. Like transformation in order to be had is, you know, you have to have the health piece. You have to have the food piece. You have to have the community piece. And you have to have the personal development piece.
You know, the health piece, when I was reading some of your stuff, it's actually more inspiring than I thought it would be when I just looked at the cover. Like, you know, it was much deeper than I thought it would be, like what you've done. And I think you might have another segment in younger females based on the chapter in your book about getting rid of superficial hostage by the hierarchy of female friends that can be very oppressive, and you're providing a conduit for them to get out of that small town high school. I was just thinking, like, if you're looking for new audiences, it'd be very cool to try to expand to teenagers who are struggling, like get them earlier in your funnel process, because that message coming from somebody as beautiful and successful as you are now, they would listen to. And it's such a positive role model, because they're all held hostage by these friends that make them feel they're dream killers. Like, anyhow, I really enjoyed that portion of your material.
It's so fun to chat about with other people, because like you guys had said, like it just helps to even understand who you are through the lenses of other people. We can get so, like, you can get so close to it that you're like,
so in the weeds.
I know what I should do next.
Yeah, give us a breakdown. What is Glossy? What is your USP? Give us the sales pitch.
Okay, Glossy, there's lots of men who are taking it, they're stealing it from their wives, so you're right in. You can be our target as well. But Glossy it's a daily beauty supplement. So it is skin and gut. It has a clinically studied probiotic. We also do hyaluronic acid, zinc, prickly pear, magnesium. We really went for all of the ingredients that we know have some of the most tangible benefits when consumed for your skin. And because I have such, I come from such a background of health and wellness and fitness, it's like whenever we go to solve a problem, it's an internal thing typically. So for me, when I thought of, when I think of skin and when I think of like beauty, it's always been, what are you consuming? Like, what are you, right down to not only just what are you eating, but like, what are you thinking? So those are different parts that we want to branch off in the future as well.
And why did you decide on like a daily consumable? Like how did this feel right?
So for me, one of the biggest staples that I've always had in my life that I've noticed is a hydration packet.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, of all the habits I've been able to stick to, I noticed that these hydration packets have been like a steady thing. So, I've taken the pills, I've done all the things, right? I've just been in this industry for so long. And hydration packets have always been a thing for me because they help me drink more water. And I was like, what if this packet did more for us? It's one of the easiest things that we can do, because it not only has the benefit of like, okay, there's good stuff in here, I should have it. But also, when I asked people, because we really talked to a lot of our communities when we did this, it was something that a lot of people were doing because they knew they needed to drink water, but they didn't want to drink water without flavor.
Yeah.
Like, it helped inspire them to drink water. So the vehicle in which we wanted it delivered to me was like the most clear of anything. Before we even came up with the formula, I knew I wanted it to be a vehicle. That was a sachet single packet, because I know that ambitious women are my favorite women to support, and those women are running around.
Yep.
And they need to throw it in their bag, and it needs to be easy. And as much as I wanted, as much as I was like, thought I would carry containers, I didn't, but I would carry sachets of a packet. So that was one of the original places where I was like, I know that I want it to be an easy consumable. I want it to be a no-brainer. And of course, I want a daily consumable, and also something that can be on subscription, because when you're creating a brand, like that is an uphill battle. I can either create a daily consumable on subscription, and get repeat customers, or I'm going to have to go get brand new customers every single month if it's like a one-time buy sort of thing, or once every 6 months. It's like the amount of marketing dollars that you will spend will be so much more on a product like that rather than a daily consumable that becomes integrated into someone's life that can also be on subscription. So I knew it had to be subscription of something that they would want to do every day.
So, I mean, that's like that absolutely touches on so many influencers and thought leaders you've spoken to, is like the power of something subscribable. Like the Rundle, Scott Galloway talks about it. Like, it's such a smarter, it's just the economies of scale makes so much more sense. I'm glad that we're talking about the kind of the business and branding behind it, because I want our listeners to for kind of like lessons learned. Like, what are some lessons learned from launching your own brand, or like mistakes you've made? Like, what have been your core takeaways?
Oh man.
I know, not a simple question.
The amount of things that I am like, oh wow, that was a fail. Wow, I spent a lot of money there and that did nothing. Wow, I should have seen that coming with that team. Wow, I wish I had KPIs for them that they would have held up.
Wow, I wish I'd fired that person earlier.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so let me think of some of the main ones. Number one, I don't know if you know the story, but this was not Glossy to start. This was a company called Light Pink. It was a non-alcoholic rosé and then an alcohol version of that. It was a wine spritz, and I started it in 2020 and raised money for that when the rise of like the whole spritz thing was
huge. Yeah.
Cloth first came out. And I was like, okay, well, I love wine and I want it to be healthy and I love connecting, but I don't want to drink, I'm not really into this like drinking regular wine or a bunch of it because I feel like crap. And also I wanted to, my book was about connecting women, and it did well, but it didn't really get into the mainstream. And my goal really was mainstream women. And so I was like, where are mainstream women connecting? Well, they're all having wine and they're, going out to happy hour. So what if I put 3 questions on the back of these cans that help them get an answer to a question that they've needed and help them connect deeper with someone.
Cool.
And so that's what it was. It was 3 questions on the back of the can. They were questions that I used for years at my events that I knew worked. And that's what we were going to go to market with. And so the lessons from that is, I wish I would have looked at it and said, I would have said, okay, is this something that they're going to be doing daily? Like, are people really going to want to drink this daily? Is this something that people naturally, is a natural tendency to subscribe to a non-alcoholic beverage? No, it's not. Is this something that they are going to want to share virally? Is it the audience that you want? No, it's not. I wish I would have asked all of those questions. Is my skill set best going to be used to market this? Like, no, it's not, because I know how to.
You can't post it daily.
What's that? Go ahead.
And you can't post it daily. Like, it doesn't fit into the box of how you understand daily social media.
Correct. And so, a great idea and something that sounds fun and that might even be popping off at the time may not be a great idea for you. So, and is it actually a viable business plan? Because the more that I dug into it, the more that I found it is very rare for companies to be successful in that. And if they are, it's typically that they are, they're either with a giant company, got bought by a giant company, or started these little offshoot brands that look like they're owned by someone, can typically be owned by a giant brand.
Yeah, it's super interesting. And on the marketing front, what has been the most successful effort for Glossy that people can learn from outside of having a large following? Because I'm sure like your fans are super loyal to you. Like, they love you. They feel like they're connected to you. But outside of that, like, organic platform.
Well, we're still really new, so we're 3 months in and we're just starting our ads. So I wish I could give you data on that, but I haven't been able to do that yet. But I would say, honestly, we're still in the community phase. So a lot of what I'm seeing is coming from my podcast. Honestly, the most consistent sales
Cool.
are coming from podcast, but I have to talk about it. Just because it's my podcast and my product doesn't mean that I can say, here's Glossy, do the link. I notice that when I specifically say what it's doing, reviews from people of what it's doing, how I use it, and the problems it's solving. When I go on longer
The story, yeah, stories.
I notice I convert, and that's also when I notice when other people are sharing when they convert. You literally can never just share something and expect a sale. It's like you have to really talk about it, of how you integrate it, what you love about it, and what problems it's solving for you.
Lori, I'm just tried to buy it in Canada. It's not available in Canada, which we got to deal with because we we have skin issues. Obviously, being up in the Arctic.
Yes.
But on Amazon, like the curation of the page, the web page and the Amazon page is awesome. You got to get your listeners to leave some Amazon reviews on there.
Yes.
On Amazon.com, because it looks too good to not, like I would immediately get more Amazon reviews on there because it looks too good to not have it.
Oh, thank you so much. We will work on that. Yeah, we're literally in that place with Amazon where we kind of just got it up and going.
Mm-hmm.
And because Amazon is such a different animal, it's a different price. We have a subscription model. We're like, how much energy do we want to drive people to there rather than our site? You can't track them. I know, and we're also priced a lot higher than most Amazon products. So it's a whole like, what angle do we want to come at for that? But yes, I need to like go have some people purchase and review.
I was going to leave one while we were here.
The thing that sucks about Amazon is that, especially when you're talking about like the podcast and like your network effect and reach, it's like 87% of searches for products happen on Amazon first. So it's like, it sucks because you're obviously losing a massive percentage. But if it's the difference of like, because it's so easy to use Amazon, so it makes it so tough for CPG brands because like the ease of use, and I think all of this just comes into like to summarize the importance of having a personal brand. Because when you have a platform that you can storytell on and ask them to purchase it through your native platform than through an Amazon versus them just like seeing a Symbiotica ad, like you get that kind of, they connect, right? And like they actually want to support you. I feel the same way, like listening to this, I've got the tab open, like I want to support because we've connected, I've heard the story, and like the story is so powerful.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I do think, if anybody is ever thinking of launching anything, I'm like, oh my God, you guys go so hard on building your brand first, because that is where the influx of our first customers came from. And I don't think that you could, especially if you're subscription, like, thank God, those are the people who are kind of like getting us through this initial period of allowing us to figure out what works and what doesn't. And honestly, if we did not have that, we would be burning through our run rate. Like, that's why that's so important.
And it becomes a resource war because you can't compete with the bigger, and every industry, there's always a big player that can outspend you. And a part of their strategy is to outspend. Like, you need to have an organic platform. This is where it's tough because I find especially a lot of women, they create products out of like necessity or need. Like, they're truly passionate about it. They create a great product. And then they're debilitated by the idea of having to also put themselves out there. But like, without that piece, there is such a limit to the success, or at least the time period in which you can see that success faster.
Yes, I totally agree.
I'm trying to think of what else I'm like interested in knowing. So you brought on a co-founder. What was the thought for that?
So it's funny because I hadn't necessarily gone down the road of like, oh yeah, I really want a co-founder. Okay, in the beginning of Glossy, I think that as we were transitioning to Glossy, there were some moments where I was like, oh, this would feel really like, this would, let's be honest, after I had my, literal butt handed to me for like 2 years of the pivot and like figuring everything out with Light Pink, that was a rough like pivot and transition. Like having to pull the plug and realize that wasn't a viable business after putting so much money into it. And then, when you have investors, like having to figure out what you're going to do and retell the story and try to do this pivot and come back and all of that stuff. So I think in the beginning, I had thought of doing a co-founder out of like, man, this would feel easier. Man, tough decisions would feel better, like all of those things, but I wasn't finding the right person. So I wasn't willing to like jump the gun into a relationship because I wanted a co-founder, because I know that is like a marriage. And I had lots of friends at the time who had either been in something and were trying to get out of it, or were really just talking through like the importance of knowing what you're getting into when you have a co-founder, and like opposite skill sets and all of those things that you want to look for. And so I was going along totally great once Glossy got started. And so I think that alleviated a lot of the pressure. Was like, okay, we launched and we did well. Okay, like, do I feel like I need a co-founder as much? Not really. But I started to feel like maybe I would want one. That feels like that would feel fun. Like it would feel fun I'm such a collaborative person that I actually process better and ideate better with someone else.
Yeah.
Like everything just moves a little faster for me. So what happened was Natalie Ellis, who's the founder of BossBabe, was one of my original investors into Light Pink. And we had worked together on Light Pink doing some strategy days. And her and I had gotten a little like closer as of recent. We were partnered on, not partnered, but put together in some other projects. We were part of this app and podcast network called Growth Day. So we were like being thrown in with each other over and over.
Yeah.
And we were really, I think, just enjoying that process of like working together in our conversations, because we both had completely opposite skill sets and just like insights. And she had told me a few months ago, we were just in a random conversation, and she goes, Lori, do you know that my original company when I was in the UK was called Oh My Glow, and it was a supplement, it was in a sachet, sold exactly like this, and it was for skin. And I was like, what? Like literally had no clue, no concept. And she took it pretty far, but it was in all of their versions of like CVS's or whatever.
Yeah.
And something ended up happening where it got ahead of her. Like she was super young and just didn't think that this was the road she wanted to go down. But she's always loved supplements. She's such like a health biohacker. And so that had kind of opened up, and she's like, I'm just so obsessed with Glossy. I love it. I like love that you're doing this. And so a few months went by, and she had left me a voice note, and she was like, hey, I don't know what this looks like, but I've been approached by a lot of people to create a product, like whether it's a colostrum or some sort of supplement product. And she's like, I've gone down the road. I've even gotten really close to it, except I can't stop thinking about Glossy because it is the exact company that I would want to create. And so she just planted a little seed and said, what would it look like if we were like, is there any room? Are you interested in any sort of like partnership? And I woke up that morning and was just listening to that, and I'm like, am I? Like, could that be good? And just started to like go down this road reasonably of like, what would this fill? What are the needs? Like, how would we work together? And everything for the first time in the thought of a partnership, it didn't necessarily feel like, oh my God, this has to happen. This is so exciting. Look at our audience. Look at this. It was like, this actually feels really reasonable. Like I made columns on paper of why this would be the most supportive thing for the company. And it was one of the first decisions that I've made, like, you know, where you're like so proud of yourself, because I didn't make it out of emotion. I literally made it out of like, this is really good for the company. Like we have such like complementary skill sets. Like I want to be out front. I want to be on podcasts. I want to be like creating. I want to be top of funnel. She loves backend. She's obsessed. She loves data. She loves numbers. She loves building those things out.
Cool.
And it was like, it just became the perfect partnership.
You should look to, or I don't know if you're aware of Midday Squares. They've done such an awesome job of leveraging LinkedIn for selling a product. And I feel like a lot of what you're doing, like, especially with like the female angle and her background, kind of leaning into that like rawness and realness on LinkedIn could be really successful for Glossy.
What's the name of the company?
It's called Midday Squares, and all three of the owners, one is Jay Carl's, and then it's his sister and his sister's husband. They all kind of really leverage their personal brand on LinkedIn by being like really raw and real, like talking about the business finally, you know, getting into the black or failing on their first business venture. And it's literally been breaking LinkedIn because everyone is so used to LinkedIn being like this is Philip's term, a display case for the ego, where they're like so humbly proud to be like to win this award again. But like being really real about business does it goes really far, and I feel like you've got tenets of that could do really well on LinkedIn.
I love that. That's actually that's my favorite approach, is like, here's what's really going on.
Yeah. And what's also cool too is Jake, who works for Midday Squares, his official title is like Rainmaker, which is kind of similar to what you're doing of like just connecting, like just creating content. You're not the CMO, you're not managing but you're creating the connections digitally that are like spreading the word of basically in generating sales, which I don't know if Rainmaker is the title, but I think the concept of what the title represents for the importance of a personal brand should enter the business vernacular, especially for e-com businesses. It's just, there's a really interesting piece to it that I would love to get your feedback afterwards if you like dig into it, but I feel like there's overlap when you're kind of seeing these successful e-com brands and the role that a founder represents.
I for sure think so. There's a brand that I love, the founders, I love them. ClearStem, Kaylee, Christina, and her partner. But she talks kind of about that concept, and they do say, there's the actions where you need to go, obviously make it rain, but that can typically come a little bit later in the company sometimes. Like,
yeah.
It comes in the beginning, but you want to like make sure that you have your buckets. So that's kind of like Rainmaker is front end. The bucket, like the person who's all, back end website, making sure your funnels are all great, like those are your buckets. And what a lot of companies do is either they have all the buckets and they don't have the Rainmaker, or they have the Rainmaker but they're not catching anything in the buckets.
Yeah.
So it's like when those two come together is when you have a great, a company that's going to scale.
Totally.
I looked at ClearSkin. I wanted to ask you, for our listeners, because you're a straight talker, I was going to ask you what's a brand that you really resonate with, and some of our best content is when we bust brands. What's a brand that you think is inauthentic or who is missing the point or doing a disservice? We're always studying good and bad brands.
Oh,
are you brave enough to slam a brand here on our podcast?
I don't know if I'm brave enough, to be honest with you, just because it goes against kind of like I have this theory where I'm like, just for me personally, where I don't feel like I need to say it for people to know it. But that is a favorite brand of mine, is ClearStem, because I resonate so deeply with their story of like creating a product out of a need. And then they're really transparent about what their first 5 years look like. Like she's come and spoken at my events and said, how much they made in their first year, year two, what that looked like, what they were doing, who was on their team, what was working for them. And I'm like, that is the type of brand that I just like, I don't know if I'll ever not use their stuff, because I am just so on board with the journey.
Authenticity.
And knowing like what's in the product too. I love that. I think just being in the supplement industry right now is really interesting to me. So I'm not going to name names, but I think we can figure things out of like, I'm just having such an awareness when I was formulating my product. Like my formulator was like, I literally got asked the question, okay, well, what marketing stance do you want to take? Because you can either like know you have stuff in here that works, or you can go with the marketing stance of just having a lot of stuff in here, but not having enough of it to work at all, but being able to market like, even though it's very dusty, that won't make a difference.
Well, it's so good. It's like a clothing company we work with, he's a conduit to manufacturing in China, and he essentially says, you can say your product is full of this, or you can get the manufacturer to say it's full of it. But there's only a few people who will make it and actually follow it and be honest about it, and that's part of the good messaging and supplementing for sure.
I just, it was that moment where I'm like, because I was sitting here going like, okay, well, how on earth am I supposed to compete with these brands that just say they do everything and have everything? And I'm like, how can they afford that? And then I had this light bulb of, what if I actually share that's what they're doing, and ours actually has amounts that make an impact, like that were studied, like.
What'd be cool is kind of you bring like a lab technician in, and you undo two packages, your package and somebody else's, and then you do tests to see what's actually in it in terms of concentrations.
That would be good.
That'd be cool.
But that's what's needed. Even what you're talking about with ClearStem, like that's what Midday Squares is doing, and it's what us, like, being a business owner, there's a lot of great aspects that come with it, but there's a lot of lows. And we don't talk enough about how lonely it is, like the failure, like picking yourself up from, like learning from mistakes or just bad decisions. And that's where these brands that we're talking about, it sounds like Clear Stem's doing the same thing, where we really feel connected to them because they were just honest about their failures. And when we can see someone that talks about that, it makes them stand out.
Totally. Yeah, I feel like that is what, I mean, I think moving forward to this younger generation, they just want to feel connected to their products and what they're,
and what's real.
What they're
Yeah.
what they're doing. And I feel like it's such a powerful way for the founders and even the team to like stay really connected to the brand as well. And it also helps you create a better product because I know that I have to be out evangelizing about it, and I can't evangelize about something I don't believe in. Like a lot of people can't, so that's good. Some people can, but there's a lot of people who can't. So I think it's holding us accountable to a better product because we do know we have to talk to our community, like
Camille,
one-on-one.
That goes back to your article in Cosmo, Camille, where you're talking about how influencers are the new future of beauty brands because they can't afford to lose their audience by lying about products they endorse. So, you know, it's not just a corporation that's nameless that doesn't care about losing their audience.
Well, yeah, and just to clarify, like influencers launching beauty brands opposed to being like an influencer for a beauty brand, like the rise of like the Mariana Hewitts and like the Civ Haters, even like the Hailey Biebers, like launching product lines. Same with you, like you're exactly in that box as well. Like you can't get away with what Shishido or Cody can get away with, right? Like you have to offer, or you lose your audience, right? And we've seen that also in the early days.
Totally.
Two things before we wrap up, Lori. One, what does the future of Glossy look like? Like, do you want to introduce a range of like, is there big plans for Glossy? Are you staying with a one cereal SKU? What's in the pipe?
So we're giving ourselves this full year to really focus on this SKU. We have actually had to, especially with Natalie coming on, because we both have we just have such a passion for products and wellness. That we had to have a conversation about like, we both have to control each other this year because we want to make this SKU successful in the flagship SKU because we really believe in it. We put a lot of time and effort into it. And we want to have all of our marketing dollars focused on this one SKU right now. Same message, same marketing. Like we don't want our efforts to be diluted anywhere. Like we want to just really focus in. But we do, if you would sit as a fly on the wall of what we talk about, yes, it gets very large.
That's super, super exciting. I'm looking forward to seeing what's in the pipe for it because I've loved what you guys have done so far with your branding. And I guess the last question is, unless Philip has anything, is we've been asking all of our guests, what is a brand to you? So if you could define what a brand is, not your brand, I'd love to hear your definition.
You know, when you said that, what immediately came to me is a brand is it's an extension of you. It's like a home that people can join or a product that people can consume. Like it's an actual extension of something, of a tangible feeling. Yeah, I don't know how else to say it. I truly feel like everything I've created has like come through my body and brain. Like
no,
it's been a part of me.
It very much is Lori Connection harder. Like that needs to we need to redo the name. Connection is the middle name. It bridges the Lori and the harder together. I think that was a perfect answer. Philip, do you have any questions for Miss Lori?
No, I just purchased my first order of Glossy, so I'll let you know if it changes the visage. I don't have the light in here, but you know, next time you see me, hopefully I look a little brighter.
Did you get 2 packs?
I love it. And let me know how you feel too. I love that.
Did you get 2?
No, I didn't. Sorry.
It's so rude. So rude. Well, thank you so much for joining, Lori. Where can people find you? What is your preferred platform? Where can they get more of you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, right now my whole world is at getglossy.com, getglossy.com. Other than that, the podcast, Earn Your Happy, I do 3 episodes a week, and then Instagram, just Lori Harder.
Cool. And if they were to read one of your books, which is your favorite book of the ones that you've written?
It's A Tribe Called Bliss. So that's the only one so far. But
Okay, cool. So A Tribe Called Bliss, and they can get that on Amazon?
Yep.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Lori.
Thank you guys so much for having me. This was so much fun. Got a little therapy too.